Hi, everyone. We are up on YouTube and doing a secondary recording to the cloud. So we are good to go when everybody gets here.
Great. Thanks, Trevor. We're a thin crowd today. Let's see if we'll give some people some time to get in here. Hi, everyone. We're just waiting to see if we can get some more people to show up. And if you could put your name in the chat, that would be much appreciated. If you're just joining us, please put your name in the chat so we can just have that as our attendance. I was hoping Austin would be here, but maybe he'll show up in a little bit. Hope everybody had a nice 3-day weekend if you didn't have to work.
You too.
Yeah, I probably should have been working, but I didn't. It's hard. Anybody do anything fun? I went to Summer Lake Hot Springs. My husband had wanted a little retreat, so we went there. I don't know if anybody knows where that is. But...
How was it? I've been wanting to go there.
Oh, it's nice. We stayed in one of their little cabins.
Awesome.
Yep. So it was nice. Do anything, Melissa? Anybody else want to talk about their weekend? We're on We're recording. I'm sure the public will want to know about that, but
Right? I didn't do anything exciting. Just the normal, no trips. Your plans sound way better.
okay, well, let me see if Austin.
I
Oh,
just
you're,
admitted Austin, and Greg Walsh is going to join us.
oh, wow, Greg. Oh my goodness. Okay. Austin, I'm glad you're here. You're running for this meeting a little bit. Uh, Trevor, did you say Greg was coming? Should we wait for him?
I just sent Greg an invitation, so hopefully he sees it soon and can click the link.
Who's that? Who is that? Zach or Trevor?
Sorry, that was Trevor.
Oh, okay. You're not coming. It doesn't look like you're talking on my end. So, okay, got it. Okay, well, let's start. Let me share my screen. Somehow, and let me get my PowerPoint up. Whoops, a little too. You know, it feels like a Monday, even though it's Tuesday. So if I'm stumbling, that's probably why. Okay, so thanks everybody for being here. If you haven't put your name in the chat, that would be great for you to do for our attendance. Today we're going to kind of work on mitigation strategy a little bit more, but before we dive into that, just some updates, which is basically our meeting notes. I don't know if anybody had a chance to look at the December 14th meeting and also our January meeting, January 26th. We need to have a review and a approval of those so I can put those in their nice little file as approved. So these are the highlights for the December meeting. We reviewed the hazard vulnerability assessment. That was a big chunk of it. And then in January, we started talking about the mission statement, the goals, and we reviewed the previous mitigation actions. Does anybody want to suggest approving those, or do we want more time? Don't all speak at once. If you haven't had time to look at them, we can wait until next month. Melissa?
They looked fine to me, but I would defer to the city and others if they had any questions or concerns.
I looked over everything. I think they're good for approval.
Anybody want to second Brian's?
This is Zach. I'll second Brian's recommendation.
Okay, and all in favor would probably be the whole group.
Aye.
Thanks. It's kind of hard to do that. Thank you, Zach. You can always do a thumbs up. Great. Got a couple of those. Greg, nice to have you on board in your new role. Okay. Moving on to mission statement goals. So at the last meeting, the steering committee wanted to revamp the mission statement and redo the goals. So we're going to go over that. So what I have here on this first page is the last mission statement and the revised mission statement. Not much has changed. I'm going to let Austin and Brian, if they have anything to chime in, we'll just start with the mission statement, then we'll move on to the goals. I'm sure there's going to be more to discuss with the goals. But Austin, Brian, I don't know if you have anything to add with the revised mission statement.
Nothing here.
How does, any thoughts on the change that we see here between the 2017 mission statement and the one we have for this update?
One of the things that came out of our meeting was we didn't want to identify people on their property. We wanted to, because it's kind of a it's a kind of an inclusive action by saying we're excluding people who are renters as well as other people. So we wanted to get away from that. We had a complaint when we did that for the neighborhood associations and went with wildland risks. So that's one of the factors that came out, is we wanted to take out their property because we didn't want to have it directed at one group of people.
Great, thanks, Brian. Any other comments?
This is Heather Dimke, City of Salem. I thought, so a few of us from here at the city did meet and kind of discuss this mission statement and the goals. And I think we did have a slight adjustment to the mission. I'm going to read out loud what I have, what was just sent to our group, and correct me if I'm wrong. But our mission statement, as we updated, I think, is identify and minimize risks and impacts to our community from natural hazards. Unless I've missed something.
Yeah, no, that's what I have on. I don't know if you're able to see the PowerPoint.
Oh, I do see it
presentation.
now. I'm sorry. So we had that updated. Never mind me. Sorry.
Yeah, so the upper one, the previous one was reduce or eliminate long-term risk to people and their property from hazards and their effects. And the updated one is just as you stated.
Right in front of
identify
me.
and then- Yep,
My bad. I'm sorry.
no, that's all right. I should have read them, so. Any comments? And you could state it here. You could also put it in the chat.
I think it simplifies it, and it's overall it gets our point across.
Thanks, Brian. Okay, I'm not hearing any objections, so we'll go forward with the mission statement. I don't know if anybody wants to, if this is worthy of doing a vote, or do we just want to go ahead with that? With what's there? Any thoughts?
I think it looks great.
Okay. Just go with what's there. That was simple. For a simple mission statement, I like it. Okay, so the group went from, I think it was 5 goals to 7. So I tried to lay these out. On the left-hand side are the goals from the last plan. And then on the right are the ones that are drafted for this plan. And I tried to group them together. So it appears that the previous goal 1 and 2 correlate with goal 1, 2, and 3 of the revised ones. So goal 1 is develop and implement mitigation activities to protect human life. And that was changed slightly to develop and implement mitigation activities to protect human life in the context of climate altered future. Goal 2, protect existing buildings and infrastructure as well as future development from the impacts of natural hazards. Goal 2 was revised to strive to protect existing buildings and infrastructure from the impacts of natural hazards. And then they added goal 3, develop and implement strategies and policies to promote more resilient future development, infrastructure and systems, pardon me. Austin or Brian, do you have any comments about those changed goals?
I think we wanted to acknowledge that it likely isn't possible to fully protect existing buildings and infrastructures. And so that's why we added strive, because we'll do our best, but recognizing that some things are out of our control is important too. And then that allows us to look at being more resilient to the things we can't completely mitigate.
Brian, do you have any other comments, or Heather?
No,
you were on.
I just want to stress the fact that resilience was, you're going to see resilience again in the other goals. And we really pushed the resilience portion of it, because people cannot just rely on the city to do everything. You need to rely on your own individual background and what you prepare for. So I think that the resilience is one of the key things we've added to this.
Heather, do you have anything to add?
No, thank you. I can't think of anything else. It was a good discussion. I think they covered it.
Anybody have any comments or questions about these 3 goals that have been added or revised and added? We're a talkative group today. There's something in the chat. Okay. Okay. Any objections? I want to thank the subcommittee for looking over those. Thanks, Levi. Thanks for the thumbs up. Anybody else want to at least interact with a thumbs up? We'll make it simple, since it is Monday on Tuesday. We might be feeling the effects of a long weekend. Thanks for your participation, everybody. Okay, so we'll move on to the next set. So it's a bit more here. So goal 3 and 4 on the left side were from 2017. And then that was changed to goal 4, 5, and 6. I'll let you look at those. So goal 3 is now goal 4. It was changed slightly. Goal 3 is previously strengthen communication and coordination of public and private partnership and emergency services among local, county, and regional governments and the private sector. It's changed to strengthen communication, plan, practice, and coordinate emergency services among local, county, and regional governments and the private sector. So just a slight rewording on that one. Goal 4 previously was enhance economic resilience to reduce the impact on the local economy. Goal 5, the new goal 5 is enhance community resilience to reduce the impacts of natural hazards and promote efficient and effective recovery. The previous goal 5 is preserve and rehabilitate natural systems to serve natural hazard mitigation functions and protect natural resources, which is now goal 6, preserve and rehabilitate natural systems to serve natural hazard mitigation functions and protect natural resources. So that looks like about the same on that one. Any comments from the subcommittee members? Brian, Austin, maybe Heather, or whoever else was on that?
I think it goes back to the fact that we still tried to put not the focus just on the city, but also the focus on the community. People again need to rely not just on us, but themselves to be able to to get through an emergency such as floods or windstorms or ice storms. So we've seen it time and time again, and it's not just the city that can do everything. The community has to rally together and be resilient in their move to get through the problems that are affecting us every year, more and more.
I think some of these rewordings also broaden the scope of the goals. So especially for the one that was previously focused on the economy, now it's recognizing that there are social networks and other systems that need to be resilient as well, and that we should be considering those.
This is Trevor Nunkes with the PD. So for 5, I mean, I understand the idea of the whole community concept within emergency management and that. I kind of like the calling out of the economy portion of it in goal 4 because, and I don't know where we go with goal number 7, but restoring or kind of bringing back the local economy is an end goal. So that is a place that we want to get back to. Whereas if we're just enhancing community resiliency, to what end? When do we know we've achieved that, or what are we actually working toward? Whereas if we can, the local economy has metrics that we can eventually work towards. So I think that maybe potentially having something in there like about the local economy, which is really what it's about, right? If that doesn't get restored, then we're not restoring or recovering effectively anyways. I don't know if that was part of the discussion on there, but I kind of like having that because then we can actually measure how we've done and what we've gotten back to. If that makes sense, sorry.
Yeah, I think our conversation was about broadening the scope, not shifting the scope. So, you know, I agree that the local economy is important, and certainly there could be actions to include metrics about the economy, but we didn't want that goal to exclude other things.
Kevin, what's your?
Well, if we're looking for a rebuttal on it, well, I think actually goal number 5 really is just a rephrasing of the mission statement. So, and I understand that broadening, maybe perhaps another goal, because I don't know. In recent discussions I've had regarding a mitigation plan or recovery, in the end, it really does come back to, you know, how do we restore the functioning of the city, and what does that look like? You know, the whole community approach is what is the method of getting there. But the goal of that approach is to restore the functionality of the city back to at least pre-disaster, you know, condition.
Do you have a suggestion on how that could be reworded, or to?
Cynthia, why don't we just we add economic and community resilience? We add them both. Yeah, that way we continue with what the group thought of, and we add maybe Trevor's enhancement to it. So we target both of them.
So what are you suggesting? Do you want to
enhance economic and community resilience to reduce impacts? Because you can't, they go together. You can't have one without the other.
economic or economy? How do we want to do that? Enhance.
I think economic.
Yeah. Okay. Austin, what are your thoughts?
I think Trevin's right that to some extent it's a restatement of the mission. So I'm not opposed to this rewording. I think it sounded a little like Trevin's focus was what the city was doing, the city as an organization. So I'm not sure that's synonymous with the economy, but I do think the two of those are overlapping.
Levi, am I saying your name right? I know I've probably pronounced it incorrectly, but go ahead.
I'll respond to Levi, but I pronounce it Levy.
Levy, oh, that's right. Okay,
Yeah,
go ahead.
just as a stakeholder, I think I appreciate both points of view, but especially like enhance community resilience. To me, that was really, I think that was a really good move, because it does broaden it to include all different types of sectors in the community. I think if we focused it only on enhancing our economic resilience, we could do that by making sure that the businesses and other things like that are back in shape as soon as possible, and leave other sectors behind, like I'm thinking like repairing housing for folks that are gonna be doing the jobs that are working, to get the economy back on track. So I like I like putting community resilience up front, but we could call out in parentheses, or I don't know, I'm not really good with wordsmithing, but calling out that economics are a big part of that. I just don't want, I think the instinct to not focus only on economic resilience, I think that was good from the committee.
Spelling it right. I'm just playing around with words here. This gets too wordy, and I can't spell it. Resilience. Oops, not reliance. I told you it was like a Monday. Okay. Great, Levy. Anybody want to have feedback on that?
I don't like how we have resilience in there twice. I think we need to come up with a way to word that a little bit better. They did a study with Hurricane Ida, and they found out that the groups, economic and community, that had planned, that had prepared themselves, and then after the actual hurricane, the groups worked together to quickly get their areas back to where they needed to be, so they could start having an effective recovery. Were more speedy in their recovery efforts. So again, it comes back to preparing and working together overall, and it doesn't just come from the economic side. It has to come from the community, and it has to be the business owners and the people that have the ability to use their contacts and so forth in order to get the community back to where it needs to be. So they're synonymous.
So the economy is part of the community, basically.
100%. It is not it's not just on the city. So it has to be the business owners. It has to be the players in the community that do that. And it makes it comes from both sides.
Levy, did you have anything else to say? I just saw your.
No, that was just agreeing with that. I think that's the point. That's a great point that Brad made.
What's everybody else thinking? Well, I would like some kind of see, Randy, you've got in here, let's see here. Enhance community resilience, including economic continuity. You got here. My little.
Yes, continuity and recovery.
And recovery. Okay, so I have a little thing that's just You, oops. Like that. Is that Randy? So enhance community resilience, including economic continuity and recovery to reduce the impacts of natural hazards and promote efficient and effective recovery. Something like that. That might be a good middle ground.
I might just add a couple commas.
Yeah.
You know,
after-
before including.
Yep. And here.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, Austin sounds like he's fine with that. Trevin? Is he still here?
Yeah, I'm still here. Sorry.
Okay.
Dealing with a school district issue. Yeah,
Oh, that's right.
I think that works.
Brian?
I concur. I like what Randy put in there.
Yeah, thanks, Randy. Okay. Unless we have any other comments, we'll move on to the very last goal. Okay, there's goal 7, develop programs to promote social resilience within the community, especially among those most vulnerable to natural hazards, recognizing that our most vulnerable communities are often those who have been historically underserved and marginalized. Just a period right after that. Let's go. Comments, questions, concerns?
Our motivation to add this goal was to ensure that we were considering equity and fair outcomes, I guess, in the way we implement this plan and the way it's developed.
Any comments, other comments, questions? Thanks, Austin.
I love the fact that we thought about equity in the conversation because it gets missed so often. So I think this sums it up.
Any thumbs up on that or questions? Thanks, Heather. Levy.
This is Randy. May I suggest one thing with this?
Yeah, go ahead.
I like it all. I'm just wondering if you may want to move this lower part. You can't see my cursor, sorry. Where it says develop programs to promote social resilience within the community. I was thinking there might go recognizing that our most vulnerable communities are often those places, and then keeping that part, just moving it down. You just see what I'm saying?
Oops, I clicked the wrong thing. Yep.
And paste that one part at the bottom that are most vulnerable to.
Oops, a nice and large font. Okay.
Is that's a little bit more of what you were wanting to say, is it not? Just for me to read that, you're reaching out to the most vulnerable communities, or I'm sorry.
Do that right?
Oh, there we go. I don't know. Does that make sense? That was just a suggestion. As you talked about it, I thought you talked about it in this order.
Austin or Ryan, do you have any comments?
I don't have a strong feeling about the order of it.
I
I think
concur with all.
it's still the same meaning
Message.
to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's fine, but with me.
Brian, were you gonna say something?
I concur. I don't think the order changes the meaning.
Any other comments? Thanks, Levy. Okay, we have no objections to that change. Okay. Any last comments on those? We'll go with what we've reviewed here. Good discussion. Okay, I want to move on to start thinking about mitigation actions. So the last meeting, we went over the past actions, which I will pull up here in a minute so we can use them as reference. But thinking about what can the city do to mitigate the natural hazards, or the community, to mitigate natural hazards that pose the greatest risk, to the city of Salem. So this is kind of a discussion, just kind of throwing some stuff out there. We might continue this to another meeting, but wanted just to get your brains working on it. But first we can look at our hazard vulnerability and where we had the highest rating. We had our medium ratings and our low ratings for risk level. So we ranked extreme heat, air quality, and winter storm as a high concern, high vulnerability assessment. And we've got the ones in the middle, and then at the bottom is landslide and volcano. So discussion, thinking about mitigation items, actions. I know Austin I put just an example in here to get people thinking, but air quality, I think Austin a couple meetings ago talked about somehow providing personal protection equipment, maybe working with retailers, either to sell it for less or make it more available during times of need. But we need to have a action for each hazard. I think multi-hazard actions can achieve that goal. And the last plan had multiple multi-hazard actions. And I will bring that up here. Might be kind of small for people to see. So let me increase the font. So these are some of the hazards. We went through a lot of these at the last meeting. And we're still trying to figure out the status on some of them. Some of these that we have here, we're going to likely carry over, such as this one, this number 2, MH number 2, coordinate with the Capital Planning Commission to integrate natural hazard mitigation into state and city respective capital improvements. Sounds like that might be just an ongoing thing. So I just put it out there right now. We can go through these again, but does anybody have, similar to what Austin had a while ago for air quality, do we have any thoughts about what we could do for mitigation actions for any of these other actions or any of these other hazards? Drought, earthquake. I think there's something pretty solid in the floodplain sections, but we might want to start thinking about, we have this new hazard air quality. What other actions might be worth putting in there? We also have water quality and water emergency. We've got a great ozone plant now, but are there some other things that we can add into our water quality Water Emergency Mitigation Action Plan. Just open it up to see if anybody has any ideas. Austin, did you just come on?
Yeah, so I guess I have two thoughts, but I'll start with my mitigation action is that potentially one that could cover a few different hazards would be establishing or identifying resiliency hubs within the community. So community locations where people can find information or get training or potentially even visit during a hazard event in order to help withstand it, I guess. So for example, if during extreme heat, you could go to a cooling center, some place that had air conditioning and was open to the public, and that could also potentially address an air quality event. And you know, potentially a few other of these like winter storms and wind storms, things like that. But that would also, I guess, maybe help create community capacity, and that gets at some of the resiliency stuff.
This is Heather Dimke, City of Salem. I just want to thank Austin for bringing that up. That was kind of my one addition as well. That's actually called out in the Climate Action Plan to have a network of neighborhood hubs. And I had the same thought in terms of air quality as having basic filtration systems in place.
I was going to mention that we will probably borrow from the Climate Action Plan and any other plan that seems suitable to put into this plan. I just haven't dug into them a lot in regards to mitigation actions. So, but yeah, that's great.
The other thing I just wanted to throw out was the idea of mitigation versus adaptation. So whether our goal is to create infrastructure so that the effects aren't as bad, or make changes to adapt to some new realities. So one of the goals referenced a climate altered future. And so what do we do to, or do we want to look at changes to what we do now within that context?
Hi, so this is Trevor again. So when looking at mitigation, so these things are gonna happen and they've happened. And now it is, what acts have we done ahead of time to make it so they're the least impactful on the people that are experiencing it? So when I think of, or to reduce their extent. So let's go with wildfire. So not being a firefighter would be like, set up fire boundaries, and protective zones, and making sure brush is trimmed back appropriately. Get information out about setting up those barriers. I think there's probably discussion about, well, we have red flag days, what those mean, so people understand that. Maybe expanding what the red flag means, to certain types of work around your house when we're at a drought level or red flag warnings, so that things don't catch on fire and create bigger issues. Windstorm, probably appropriate trees and vegetation, and appropriately manicured trees or kept trees. So knowing where they're at near power lines, making sure they're trimmed right, keeping away from certain areas that will cause problems, making sure people are staying up on trimming their trees, things of that nature that are going to cause major issues. And I haven't read through all of the old mitigation plans, but so that's kind of what I look at when we talk about those things, what the city can do, and then what we can help provide for people. In a perfect world for water filtration, it would be like, a code that would require all new builds to have certain water filtration capabilities, with the ability to install that into their water system, of that, things like that. Those are kind of pie in the sky. So things of that nature, shooting from the hip.
So Cynthia, I guess my question is, when it comes to mitigation, what are you looking for? Are you looking for, like what Trevor said? Are we looking for pre-plan? Are we looking for action at the actual incident? Or are we looking at what's going to happen after the fact?
You're muted, Cynthia.
Thanks. I think what Trevin mentioned was accurate, and how are we going to make our the community more resilient when a hazard happens? So what have we done prior to a hazard to improve the community? I mean, it could be anything, but we're looking at mitigation, hazard mitigation. So how are we going to mitigate the impacts of the hazard, that hazard event? Retrofitting your buildings. Having, I think Austin's ideas also can fit in there as well, where you're educating the people, you're also getting them to know that there's this resiliency hub. And so those are established. So when an event happens, they know where to go and they know what to do during a hazard. So it's a lot of what's happening beforehand, but it's going to help you when you're in a hazard. Hopefully that makes sense.
And on this plan, how detailed do we want to be on the mitigation portion?
Well, it can, if we look at, they can be, I don't know if you recall some of the ones that we worked on, we reviewed last time, they were simple. There are some, we can go into more detail. There are some forms that we can help maybe solicit to the group, and we can think about this in more detail. And it dives into, okay, does this need funding? Who has the capacity to fund it if funding is required? If they don't, what kind of funding options do we have? And I don't have one of those forms, but I'm just trying to think where to get one. That might be worth sending out to the committee to kind of just start brainstorming more on that. And it goes into detail. So the way we list them here on the table is going to be simple, but there's can definitely be more detail behind the scenes, and we can include those forms in the plan. And I'm trying to remember if the past plan had those forms included. I can't recall, and I don't want to bring it up. Yeah, Levy.
Yeah, I'm not sure how this would fit in, but I think one emergency preparedness, as others have mentioned, I think it's a big key. It would be, a mitigation action across all of those crises. But what I've seen, at least with the Spanish-speaking community that I serve at Mano a Mano, is the ability to be consistent with that emergency preparedness is a challenge, because especially if you're wanting to do it in the language that's native to the community that you're working with, like I said, Spanish in that case, but we have other communities, emerging communities here in Salem that are not English speakers, and you will undoubtedly get some individuals who will step up and say, yes, I want to do this, or I have the ability to do this, I have the time, I have the resources, but the larger community will need some level of support. And and to do it consistently so that it becomes a culture of emergency preparedness. That takes a lot of work, coordinator work, and some resources. Not all of it money, but some of it, money, time from different partners.
And that, I think, could definitely be a mitigation action. And it would, I'm just trying to think of how to word it, but you said it very well. But the consistency to develop a, consistent emergency preparedness plan among the entire community. That's going to include non-Spanish or non-English speakers, underrepresented communities. I'm just trying to see if there was something like that in the plan before. But I think that's a good one to include.
So Cynthia, I think that would probably fall under kind of like an all hazards.
Yeah, multi-hazard, definitely.
Yeah, if you had an overarching all hazards section, and then that would be a emergency preparedness program or plan, which I think is actually probably a separate document that would have culturally competent outreach for the varying communities within the greater Salem area.
Randy?
Hi, Cynthia. Sorry, I wasn't applauding everything everybody was saying. I was hitting the wrong icon. I finally hit the raise the hand. Anyway, I think along the lines of Brian, a big question with this from an emergency management side of things is the scope. How big and how broad are you looking at with this? Because this can get pretty big, as far as citywide for I'm looking at the drought one, and I just Googled drought mitigation, and, you can get very in-depth pre-drought measures for mitigation. What do you do long-term, short-term, city volunteering in terms of storage capacity increases? What can the city do to do so? Reducing the use voluntarily and then citywide regulatory, so this could be very, very expansive. Fortunately, there's a great deal of resources to build from. This is not something that needs to be built from scratch. So a lot of cities, a lot of resources available to do so. So I think that would be a big question about how deep and how big and how broad.
Thanks, Randy. So these plans are renewed every 5 years. So we can have our table of actions. It's going to change from what we see here. We're probably going to talk about whether it's a short-term project, long-term project, if there's a funding source available, what groups or whether it's city or nonprofit or businesses are going to be involved in it. So we can always revisit this every 5 years. And so it's really what the city and the community want. We just want to, and if there's something that is going to require funding, that's why we do this natural hazard mitigation plan, is to open the door, for lack of better wording, is for open the door for funding, whether it's through FEMA, the EPA for air quality, or something like that. So it's how much, what does the city want to do to make there a better community?
So that was just my thought, including, I was just looking again, drinking water and supplies, and does the city wish to be a part of that and having itself an emergency. There's such a big range in this area. Thanks. So that was just food for thought.
Yeah, no, that's great. And it's that, I mean, this meeting is just to kind of get our brains working. I think there's a lot of great ideas. And I just wanted to just, put it out there, see what people are thinking. If it definitely, I could see continuing some of these that are ongoing. It's worth keeping them on there. Some of them will be removed. But we want to see if we can add some new ones, especially for those new hazards that we have, or reword some of these. Brian?
So I do think though, if we were to go down the path of putting some type of ways for the public to mitigate the actual incidents, I think we would limit it at a page at most, because wildfire, you can go defensible space, you can talk about campfire safety, you can talk about wildfire evacuation and the 8 Ps. There's a lot of stuff you can do, but we're gonna have to limit it to a certain amount, because we don't want to bite off more than we can chew.
Right, and then we have to consider your capabilities, whether it requires funding or not, how much.
That's correct.
Yeah.
So because if you look at defensible space and funding, that's not going to come from the city. That's going to come from either individual or through grants from the Oregon State Fire Marshal's office and beyond. So I think that's what we need to consider. We can put in recommendations that people do it on their own, and when it comes to wildfire evacuation and all that, that's still on their own. But maybe that's where we need to go when it comes to not a cost factor, but just put suggestions. But again, we need to limit what was the kind of suggestions we put in there, so we don't put in too much where they, I don't know, or maybe we just put in links to certain informational pages so they can actually go look it up themselves.
Yeah, I think a potential action could be creating a handbook that was specific to Salem for how to be, natural hazard ready. I know we did a great series about 2 weeks ready and how to kind of cover our bases. And I think that kind of outreach is what builds the individual resiliency and preparedness. But I think within the scope of this plan, it needs to be things that the city is willing to or has the capacity to take on, so that we can work towards actually accomplishing them. Because if we can't control the outcome, then I don't know that it is within the scope of this plan.
Greg?
Yeah, I absolutely, having been the person for that for the last couple of years, I'd spent a lot of my time out in the community talking about just kind of basic preparedness, and just talk, I'd recommend people get 2 weeks ready, but have a plan for everything. I spent a lot of time doing that, and I still only captured a fraction of the population. So, and as an office of one for that position, knowing how much else there is to do, it's kind of hard to say that you're going to meet a certain goal or percentage of the population and engagement, because, and this also ties back to what Levy was saying about getting people to actually be engaged. There's a lot of people that don't have time or don't have capacity to even consider something, taking the time to do these things, because their life is just so busy, or there's nothing that actually involves them or engages them or gives them a justification why they should spend money or time or effort on this. That was a constant battle that I fought for the last 5 years. There is just trying to get people to be interested and engaged, and then getting the time that worked for them and me. And so many times it wouldn't work, or I'd set up a presentation expecting 100 people and 20 would show up. So really hard to do that as any type of real metric or number or action. I think it's important to continue doing that preparedness fundamental in the community and reaching out into the community and doing those things. But it's really hard to set a metric to that. Now, there's a lot of resources that we share that help, that's one of the other big things is handouts and resources that, I provided to a lot of churches and groups and clubs and organizations to help share the word when I couldn't be there. And that's something that, can help with, that helps. But again, it's kind of hard to say how effective that is.
It might be worth, continuing with what Greg has done, but having maybe, I'm trying to think about what Levy was saying, to being consistent in emergency preparedness, and it makes me wonder if what's the word I'm looking for is like just have a coordination with or partner, here's a good word, partnering with the communities, the levies group, the churches, and just get the message out there, so the burden isn't entirely on the emergency manager of City of Salem, although the emergency manager would be a key individual on that committee. But maybe just establish more of a partnership with these strong community groups. Levy?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking now. Because again, especially in the case of newcomer communities, they're still trying to learn about the resources, connecting with the community. So it's going to be much more effective if you're working with a partner that's already trusted and that can engage them and already has the contacts with those communities and those families. But like when we've done it in the past, one of the issues we run into is like, okay, we got a couple dozen people trained in this, and they were very excited and very committed, but collecting all the emergency preparedness kits, that became an issue, like the economics of it, but also finding out that they had a lack of storage space for the folks who lived in apartments. And then, also thinking about that, the apartments, what apartment managers or those housing companies, what kind of responsibility or partnership opportunities are there with them? Because we started seeing, well, like there's maybe 20 some families living in one complex, and none of them have any. There's no training about evacuation routes or anything like that. So there are multiple touch points where different partners can be integrated, and some of it can be light touches, but to keep it consistent and create that culture, it's gonna take a lot of collaboration from multiple people and churches, community-based organizations, and I really consider that some of this will take some money. Also media, I don't want to forget about that. Just to repeat the message about being ready. Like, this is not something that's not likely to happen. We will have some kind of emergency. We just lived through several, and we just saw how unprepared the community was.
Thanks, Levy. Melissa has something in the chat. Community members are a great resource for understanding local vulnerabilities to natural hazards, which can frame and direct appropriate and effective mitigation strategies. I was going to touch on, Levy, the economics in the storage space. I mean, there's probably some funding out there for mitigation, for mitigation actions like this that would be for those community-based organizations that are helping with the underserved, underrepresented, the non-English speaking groups. So we could probably dive into that, but you've got a great idea there. Trevin, or first, Greg, did you have anything else? Your hand's still up. No, okay, so Trevin.
Yeah, so I feel like we're kind of conflating mitigation and preparedness, which are two separate things. So in mitigation, which this plan would be for, it is coming up with those ideas that will kind of reduce that impact of the event that's going to happen. With the mitigation plan, one of the plans would be to create a community preparedness program that would do that kind of outreach and tell people what to do and where the resources are and how to help them. So that would be just one of the overarching goals, with the idea that if it's in our plan and if there are grant resources out there to fund that portion of this, that's what we want to do. So we'd want to identify that as a goal, say, hey, we don't have the money for it, but now that it's part of our mitigation plan, which is buttoned up, T's are crossed and I's are dotted, then we can ask for that funding from some place and then begin that. And that plan itself would expand for the preparedness aspect. What does that look like? How does that community react to it? Within this, I think we need to look at our largest threats, break down what the city already does, what it needs to do. I guess one would be like flooding. Or do we have all the infrastructure already set within the city for flooding? Is our stream monitors up to date? Do we have enough of them? Things that I don't know anything about flooding. I'm just kind of going from this, but do we already have that infrastructure, which this plan would be requesting to the federal, state, and county governments to say, hey, look, we've identified these issues within our infrastructure that if this was to occur, we would have a worse disaster. If you give us funding, or we come up with funding or prioritize it, we will mitigate that hazard moving forward. So that's kind of where we need to be. Community preparedness is one piece of that, but that rolls into the next phase of the emergency management cycle. So I think getting back to what are some things that each individual group, or what this group identifies as the city is needing in order to mitigate these problems.
Well, I think, yeah, that's great. I just lost my train of thought there. We need just to present to FEMA with this plan. Okay, these are our largest threats. These are the issues, and this is how we would like to try to mitigate those issues. I think the community preparedness plan is a good idea. Something similar was done last time with the floodplain. The city of Salem had an action to put together a flood management plan, and that was completed. So something like community preparedness plan. Yeah. Any other comments or questions or further dialogue? Anybody want to put anything out there? Jennifer?
Yeah, I have quite a few thoughts as I look down the list of hazards that projects that we're working towards in my section and division would relate to. It would be helpful just to have some time to look at the list and think about and write stuff down, and then come back together or send those to you. Is that
that's
kind of a good direction to go?
Yeah, and I think you are working on a project now, or we could, and there's definite relation to the mitigation plan, then it'd be worth putting that in the plan as well. So definitely some cross-pollination here. That's why we're going to probably look at the climate action plan to see what we can take from that and put it in here. whatever you have, Jennifer. But yes, I want to just kind of get our brains moving here. I will try to find that form that we could probably work from when it comes to figuring out mitigation actions. And we can just work together on that, or you can work on it separately. You can, if you need to, establish a little subcommittee, maybe in your own division, or, levy with your organization or others. I know we've got Randy with the transportation, because you're not all from city agencies, you're from outside. So I will send that to everybody. Maybe the homework assignment before our next meeting will be to look those over from your perspective, from where you work, and how what actions might be worthy of putting in here. And I'll try to provide a little bit more information and some guidelines. Does that sound good to everybody? I got a thumbs up from Levy. Thanks, Austin. Brian, Melissa, great. Thanks, everybody. Who's asking for my contact information? Me? You want my contact information? I could put that in there. I always forget my address.
My apologies, Cynthia.
Yeah.
That's me, Major Gary Fellow. I'm just putting my contact information so I can get included in the next meeting.
Oh, perfect. Yes.
Yeah, I appreciate listening to all your thoughts, and I'm learning a lot.
Yeah, and did you already identify yourself in the chat earlier?
No, not yet.
Okay, just mention where you're from, and yeah, your contact information. I'll
I'll
definitely
do that.
add you.
Thank you.
Perfect.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much.
Okay, we can get out early if that sounds like a plan. I will put something together, get you guys thinking about this, work together as a group or alone, and we'll reconvene in March, which Brian, Brian, I think had to leave early.
No, I'm still here. I'm looking at dates right now, because I didn't see anything on the schedule in March.
So do you have a new emergency manager, or do you and Zach want to do a doodle poll? I mean, Greg's done doodle polls in the past, so we could try to set something up for March, April, May, something like that.
Yeah, I'll send out one. I just don't have everybody's email address. So Zach, if Zach wants to do it, that would be awesome.
Okay, and I just sent a revised list to Zach, but we're going to want to include, and I don't know how to say your name, but the gentleman who just spoke, we'll include him on that as well.
Zach, can you handle the doodle poll?
I don't know if I can send those out or not, but we'll talk about it.
All right. Okay.
Okay, I'll send both of you a revised list, and you can duke it out. Greg, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I was just saying that the doodle poll is literally, I just use a free one. So go to the doodle poll and fill it out.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's really easy.
And then just drop the link in. So.
Okay. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Cynthia.
You're free to go a little early.
Thanks, Cynthia. Bye.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye.
And if Trevor is still here, just if you could send me everything you sent me last time, that'd be great.
I will do that.
And I will stop sharing. Thanks, everybody.